Welcome to Uniquely Wired Podcast, where we uncover the beauty and uniqueness of autism. Hi, I'm Nani, your host and passionate advocate for autism. Join me as we explore the world of autism through heartfelt conversations and informative discussions. Welcome back to another episode of Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm so excited to be here today and have you guys on this community, where we are sharing insights and just uncovering the beauty and uniqueness of autism. So today I have a very special guest with me who I've known for the past, I want to say 5.5 years, 6?
Longer.
Really?
Yeah, this would be
So then I want to say 7 because my daughter is 7.
This would be year 9. Remember, I knew you before you were pregnant with her.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
2014.
Sheesh.
2014,
Time
Nani.
has flew by. Look at that. Wow. Yeah, so I guess it's been 9 years. So, Jen, if you can please just bless my listeners with letting us know who you are and also how did you become a special education advocate?
First off, I want to say that I am completely honored and thrilled to be a guest on your podcast. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Nani.
Yes.
Who is Jen? So I am currently working as a special education advocate and consultant and motivational speaker in private practice. But at the core of who I am is I'm a lover of Christ. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm an empath. And the empath is an overarching component, and it's interwoven into everything that I do, from being obviously a lover of Christ, to being a mom, to being a wife, to working as passionately as I do within the field of special education. I've worked in the field of special education for over 2 decades, came out of grad school and immediately went straight into the field, starting off with the Cerebral Palsy Association of Delaware County, which is an approved private school for children with cerebral palsy. And then from there, I worked in a variety of different public school settings. I worked in approved private schools. I've worked in the capacity of a special education psych, a psych assist. So, yeah. And excuse me, I meant to say a psych assist, not a special education psych, but as a psych assist within the behavioral health field. I've worked in homebound. I've worked in extended school year services. I've just completely immersed myself, in the field of special education. And I'm very passionate about helping those with exceptionalities realize their full potential and providing support to those who are the caregivers, guardians and parents, and professional providers of those working with those individuals.
Yeah, and I should mention Jen is my, special education advocate, but she's also, I consider her my IEP coach. She has been helping me in this journey, and we've recently, connected when it comes to this. She would see what I would post about my daughter, and she just felt the need to reach out and start helping me with this because we have, and I've said this before, we have to acknowledge when we need help and when we have to get that help. So, I guess my next question would be, how do you define autism advocacy, right? And why is it essential in today's society?
That's a good question, Nani. Autism advocacy includes empowerment, includes education, it includes enhancing understanding, it includes championing for the rights of those who have autism, as well as, once again, their caregivers, the professionals that work with them. It's about helping to enhance an overall sense of inclusion across all environments. And that's something that we've come some ways with, but we still have a ways to go. There are still environmental agencies where there aren't inclusive components. And one of those that I know you're championing very strongly for is, and it's a paradox, is the church community. right? And so that's just an example, not to point the finger or anything at them, but there are others as well. And so in the true form or definition of ignorance is to not understand, to not know. Sometimes we fear what we don't understand. Sometimes we are judgmental to that which we don't understand. Sometimes we stereotype things that we don't understand. And so autism advocacy is about broadening the understanding in a comprehensive manner across all environments, not just the school environment.
That is so beautiful. I love that. And I think, I'm pretty sure a lot of the families that are listening to this podcast may feel lost or they don't know, what are the next steps?
Mm-hmm.
What is this IEP going to come with? Because again, I didn't know a lot of the things that were in my daughter's IEP because I didn't go to school for this.
Right.
I'm just, if this school, well, first of all, we should feel like we can trust the school. Maybe I'm going a different route here, but we're going to go there.
Okay.
I should feel like I should trust the school.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case with my daughter's IEP recently, I went to the IEP meeting. I'm thinking, okay, well, these people know what they're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're trusting these professionals. They should know what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
To then feeling completely played by them because they clearly know what they did. And at the same time, they let you walk out of that meeting thinking everything's okay. Now, things begin to unfold. And now you're like, whoa, what in the world just happened here? And it's like, how can we fully trust these individuals when these things are happening to us as parents? And I should say our children as well.
Mm-hmm. So first off, I just want to say one of the things that sort of makes my advocacy and consultant practice unique is that as I stated at the onset of this interview, I've worked in a variety of school settings. I initially come from the school districts, from the public school district. I've worked in charters, I've worked in approved private school settings. And one of the things that I know about the individuals that are working in these settings is that we're there, and I consider myself an educator. We're there for the most part. There are exceptions, right? But we're there for the most part because we truly want to help. Right? We don't take Hippocratic oaths as medical professionals do, but it's just unspoken. For the majority of us, we're there because we truly want to be there and we want to make a difference. It's definitely not for the dollar. So one of the things that I work with parents on and with school districts on is understanding each other's perspective. Initially, as an advocate, at the time that I first started my practice in 2006, I did not have, I had two children at the time. And then throughout my practice, I had a third, and none of them had any type of identification of exceptionality. And a lot of times advocates are born out of the parental front where they have a child with an exceptionality and they immerse themselves in learning as much as possible about their child's exceptionality that they become subject matter experts to an extent and start to champion for the rights of others. That was not my experience in becoming an advocate. I came from the school system. And I knew that I had something unique to offer parents because I'm going to bring to you sort of like, behind the scenes, right? I understand what the people on the opposite side of the table are thinking and doing and the why behind why they're thinking and doing it. And I can give that information to my parents. Subsequently, fast forward, of my three children, two of them do have an exceptionality. And so now I understand it even more so. I understand it not just as a professional, but also as a parent. And so I get it when you say, like, how can we trust these individuals when the IEP may have some mistakes that may in fact result in a lack of a free, appropriate public education, FAPE, which is a cornerstone under IDEA of special education services. And so that I implore my parents to understand that, educators are human. They do make mistakes. And it is incumbent upon parents to know as much as possible and to know what you don't know so that you can secure the assistance of a professional who may be knowledgeable or who should be knowledgeable and can provide you with that level of knowledge that just the regular lay parent would not have. And so when you talk about how can you trust, I think that, it's important to understand what your child's IEP should contain and understanding that you're not going to know everything, but that you are looking at benchmarks of progress. Because in
Yeah.
those instances, you'll be able to catch if, in fact, there's something that has been missed or overlooked in your child's IEP.
Mm,
And from there, you understand that you can request an IEP meeting at any time. And the reason why it's set forth like that is because, progress may be hindered and there may need to be a change, something adjusted in the way that a student is being instructed or the type of therapies that they are receiving.
mm-hmm.
And so we have measures in place from a federal, state, and local level, as long as parents understand what those protocols and practices are, to sort of,
Mm,
mitigate, not necessarily
mm,
not catch if a school district or a school makes a mistake, but to bring it to their attention, have some
mm-hmm.
awareness, and then
Right.
mitigate so that we're not waiting the full year to come back to the table, right, for the child's annual IEP and
That's
realize, oh
good.
my goodness, we should have been doing something different,
Mm-hmm.
so.
That's really good. And I think, I didn't know a lot of the things,
Right.
that you brought up to my attention.
Hmm.
So I'm so grateful, that now I feel like, to be honest, I've never felt so prepared for an IEP meeting the way I feel. I'm so serious. And I'm not saying that because of you here, because
Right.
I've told you this, and I tell everybody, I'm like, man, you have to get yourself with somebody that can review your child's
Hmm.
IEP from a professional standpoint, because you're going to look at it as a parent.
Hmm.
And we may find a little more, mistakes, but I feel like a professional is going to look, yes, they're going to look at your point of view, but they're going to look more at the bigger picture. And that's
Right.
important. The
Right.
legal aspect, I should say. My next
Absolutely.
question for you, Jen, would be, what are some common misconceptions about autism that you often encounter in your work? What you do.
Right.
And how do you address them? I know it's a loaded question. And please, by all means, feel free to share whatever's in your heart.
So, we, not unlike most exceptionalities, there, again, myths come from a lack of understanding, right? And so, again, that's a part of the whole advocacy component is debunking, dispelling those stereotypes that come when you know just a little bit enough to be dangerous, but you truly don't understand. One common myth about autism is that all children with autism are nonverbal. Completely not true. Completely not true. And it's a spectrum, as are most exceptionalities, and I've said that, right? But autism is the only one that actually carries that connotation in its name, and rightfully for good reason, because it's such a broad spectrum. You have children who are nonverbal, and then you have children who are chatty Cathys. So that's one myth, and when I come across it, I remind people that, as Autism Speaks would say, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. That's it, right? It's definitely not a one size fits all. There are overarching characteristics to this neurodevelopmental condition for sure, right? But there's variances. And so being nonverbal is one myth that, I oftentimes have to dispel. Another one is that if you have autism, that you are savant. Again, not true, not necessarily true. Some are, some aren't. I I tell people that autistic children are like any other children. They have a set of strengths and they have a set of areas of need. They're like all people, you
That
know.
is so good.
That
That was
that.
so good right there, because I think it's so true. Like,
Hmm.
they look at autistic individuals like, oh my God, there is something wrong. Like, they're not able to do this, they're not able to do that. That we forget there are things we can do as neurotypical
Absolutely,
people.
absolutely,
Like, there are things that I struggle with.
right.
But yeah, I know my strengths and I know what I can bring to the table. But why are we so fixated? Okay, I'm going to say it. Why we become so fixated on what that individual cannot do versus what they can do.
I believe a part of it is largely due to another myth, which is that all children with autism have behavior problems, and all children with autism do not have behavior problems. There's not behavior problems, it's communication problems, and it's a huge difference. So every behavior has
Mm,
a reason. Every
mm.
behavior, what you do, what I do, the next person does, what someone with autism does. Every behavior has a reason. And
And
when
by
you,
that you mean, I'm sorry,
mhm,
by that you mean anything that we do that might be wrong or
mhm,
that's just not okay for society, there's something that has triggered that.
absolutely.
It's like trauma. When we go through trauma in life,
Hmm.
whatever it was that you went through as a child or even as an adult,
Hmm.
as you grow up, certain things are going to trigger that.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So it's like when our children have a certain behavior,
Hmm.
because yes, there are kids that are autistic that have behavior challenges.
Hmm.
That of course there are ways that we can work with that, and that's when ABA therapy plays a big role in, because they help
Hmm.
a lot with those challenging behaviors, and
Hmm.
we want to decrease those behaviors so we are able to just, I guess, regulate in a way where our children are able to regulate, right?
Right.
So like if there's something that my daughter is doing that may not be appropriate for society, or as she gets older, because there are
Hmm.
some behaviors that are cute when they're
When
little,
younger. Hmm.
but as they get older, it's not going
Right.
to be cute anymore.
Correct.
So we want to make sure, we work on that. So I love that you mentioned that and you brought that up.
Yeah, no, because I mean, a lot of times what people perceive as behavior, misbehaviors, and that manifests into behavior challenges comes from one of the symptoms or characteristics of autism, pretty much no matter where you are on the spectrum, is communication difficulties. And you can be, like I said, you could be nonverbal, you could be verbal, but regardless of where you are on the spectrum, there's communication difficulties, right? And there's social interaction difficulties. Um, and so understanding how to empower our children with autism or autistic children with the ability to communicate effectively, whether you're using a total communication system, whether you're using, solely AAC, whatever it is, empowering them with communication, and then also addressing the sensory component, because that's another symptom that oftentimes individuals or autistic children will present with, is the self-regulation and the sensory input that they struggle with at times. So it's about understanding those components. And if you're not versed or you don't have experience in working with an autistic child, then just from the outside looking in, it looks like a behavior difficulty. It looks like all these children have behavior problems, but that is not it. So again, that's where being a mouthpiece and educating individuals about what autism is and what autism isn't comes into play.
That is so good that you said that. Just yesterday after church, we went to have some friendlies, and there was this lady on the other side of the room in her table with her family, and I'm right here. I'm clearly giving her eye contact because I'm already getting irritated at the fact that she just keeps looking over, and I'm just confused as to why she keeps looking over. So I'm really trying, because I said, okay, I just had a whole lot of Jesus. Number one. Okay. Okay. Um, Number two, I know Jesus is teaching me, I got to show grace. So I'm really trying to put that to practice. But the way she was looking at me wasn't a pleasing way, for me to feel any better. So anyways, my son is sitting in the high chair right next to me. So obviously she's looking at him. Jacob has lots of sensory needs, lots of sensory challenges, and he has to always carry with this chewy, which is a tea, technically supposed to chew on it, but he doesn't. He just rather hang around with it. And he's looking at YouTube videos, and he gets really excited and starts stimming. And I guess she's just looking at him because he's doing all this verbal stimming, lots of noise with his mouth. And I'm like, shh, I'm literally doing this to his mouth. I'm like, buddy, shh. Like, it's becoming so much. So I'm getting overstimulated on the other hand. At the same time, I'm dealing with people staring. So, I mean, it's just, okay, can we talk about that? Because as parents, we're becoming so overstimulated because you're dealing with it all. You're trying to calm your child down. At the same time, trying to deal with people. Because we get it. We'd be like, I don't care what people say, but deep down we do. We do care. And it does matter, right? My daughter's also happy, so she's looking at him. I don't know. At that moment, I just feel so overwhelmed. So, you saying, the lack of education, people not being aware that this is how it looks, but to them, it's going to look like this kid is not behaving correctly. But deep down, it's not that he's not behaving correctly. He's just having that sensory seeking moment that he doesn't know yet because he's only 4 years old. He doesn't know how to manage it or how to, I don't want to say behave, but I guess how to cope with it, I guess is a better way to say it. How to cope with his sensory challenges in public.
And the only way he's going to learn that is by being in public. And so the public has to understand that, and again, everybody's level of understanding is not going to be the same. That's an unrealistic expectation. I know when I used to work for the Timothy School, which is an APS for children with autism, we did a lot of community-based education. And, sometimes we would have, and it was contrived, right? So if we took them to the aquarium, we did our homework, and we took them on a day, and we worked with the New Jersey Aquarium and the best time to take them. If we did, the horse drawn carriages through Old City, again, we were contrived. We were very deliberate in what we did, but we also at times would have little handouts that we would give, depending upon the behavior that a child may start to engage in for whatever reason, so that, to be fair to them, so that they had some level of understanding, and also to protect the child to some extent as well. Because again, if you don't know, you don't know. I do feel like though we've come quite a ways with respect to understanding what autism is from a layperson's perspective. There's so much more work to be done, but when you think about how we came from, what was it, O'Connor's first thoughts and papers in the 1940s to then Hans Asperger's, who was definitely more progressive in his thoughts. Then you had Rain Man. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. Dustin Hoffman came out in the 80s. Now, when that came
I'm
out,
about to say, I was born in 94.
I know,
okay?
I know, but it's
not
one
trying
to
to
check
make
out.
You feel older.
But it's one to check out because
yes,
what it did, where I'm going with this is it opened up people's eyes. Because another thing too is that yes, the identification of individuals with autism has definitely increased. We're at, what is it, 1 in 36 right now, which is up from 1 in 44, which is where we were, not that long ago, according to the CDC. And then you're talking 4 in 10 boys, 1 in 10 girls. But the truth of the matter is that, people are like, oh my goodness. And that's where Wakefield's whole thing about the vaccines came out, right? Oh my goodness, it must be. But the truth of the matter is we started to be able to identify because there was more knowledge about it. Rain Man did do a lot for society with respect to understanding, this condition called autism, which prior to really, there really wasn't much understanding or knowledge about it at all before the 80s, right? And then, from there, we went and we started to enhance the ease with which one could be diagnosed with autism. Because prior to the late 80s, early 90s, diagnosing was very, very difficult. And it was specific specialists that you had to get your child in front of in order to be able to get a diagnosis. And so as diagnosing became more readily available, and our understanding, the medical profession's understanding of autism grew, consequently, we started to diagnose more individuals with autism. And it's not that there weren't individuals with autism or that all of a sudden, there's, so many more. Yes, it is increasing, but there are reasons too that speak to, that whole piece. And back coming full circle to talking about just the public's understanding of autism, there's more work to be done. But, I think as long as we have professional organizations that are out there that are helping to broaden people's understanding. And as long as we have people such as yourself, out there who are raising awareness and helping people to truly understand the instances and experiences like what you shared from yesterday, will hopefully, hopefully, become lesser and lesser and lesser.
That's so good that you share that. I'm gonna have to watch that movie right now. I wonder if my husband has watched it,
I
but
mean, he was a savant. And that's part of the reason where that whole idea of, oh, if you have autism, you're a savant, because we don't have a whole lot of movies that were as, I guess, as popular as that one was. Um, and so that's sort of where that sort of came out from. It's like, oh my goodness, if you have autism, you are. No, not
right,
necessarily. Not
right.
necessarily.
That's so good. Thanks for sharing that, Jen. I think that was a really good insight. My next question would be, how do you collaborate with parents, educators, and other stakeholders to ensure that the needs of autistic individuals are properly addressed within the education system? Because I know that's one of your main focuses.
Yeah, right. So I'm just embarking once again into the advocacy and consultant world, coming from a charter where I was the director of specialized services. And even prior to, I would say when you ask me, how do I go about advocating and collaborating with the individuals, it depends on what role I'm in. So in my current role, it looks like providing resources and supports for individuals, whether they be educators or whether it be parents. And that's one of the things that I deliberately put into place on my social media platform, is that I'm not just speaking to parents. I'm not just speaking to educators. I'm not just speaking to therapists. I'm speaking to all, right? Because I have experience, personal and professional, in all of those realms. And it's the whole idea of us, the strength and the power that comes from the collaboration when we are working with understanding of one another. And that's my biggest focus, is the whole idea of the power behind collaboration. And right on down to community mapping and those agencies within the community that we can pull into our support system as we work with schools to make sure that we are exhausting everything that we can exhaust to expedite the progress of our autistic children, and being as creative as possible, um, and not being stuck with this is the way we do things. But what are some additional ways that we can do? What are some different ways that we can do things? And not for nothing, while the COVID pandemic was, definitely devastating, there was definitely some silver linings that came out from that as well. The whole idea of ingenuity is the great disruptor. And while it was, had very negative disrupting effects, it also had some very positive disrupting effects. And so education need not look the way that it did look prior to March 13th of 2020. We are opened up to just a wide array of being able to integrate technologies and collaborate with professionals, beyond our scope of just our school building.
That's so good. I love that. I mean, I think you're doing a phenomenal job, because like you
Thank you.
said, you're not just educating educators, you're not just
Right.
educating parents or therapists, but you're also educating, the community. Just
Right.
community. I mean, social media is so big.
It's huge.
You can choose what you want to share on there.
Hmm.
This is going to stay on the internet for life. So,
Exactly.
what is it that you want to share on those platforms? So,
Right.
I think that's so good that you're doing what you're doing. Another question I wanted to ask you was, what are some resources and organizations that you recommend to
Mhm.
individuals who want to learn more about effective autism advocacy strategies?
Okay. There's a myriad of them out there. I definitely am a proponent for Autism Speaks, for the Autism Self Advocacy Network, which is what's unique about them is they are a network of individuals who have autism, and it's run by them, right? So who better to understand and to be able to provide insight than an individual or a group of individuals who have autism themselves, right? Obviously, you have the Autism Society, you have the ARC, you have the National Council on Disabilities. They do a lot with, and all these organizations definitely address legislation, which is huge too. Let's not forget about the importance of research, the importance of funding. That's a huge component of advocacy as well. As a part of my practice too, is to not just educate and empower, individuals working in schools and parents and therapists, but to also address those leaders on the Hill, address those leaders at our state, address those leaders locally, to make sure that they have an understanding of what our needs are as we, work to just make sure that we are doing all that we can to support individuals with autism. I think, in addition, looking at local supports, local parent networks that are out there to support your needs as a parent of a child with autism or an autistic child. I think that reading, I know, what is it? Thinking in Pictures by Temple Grandin is definitely a good book to read. I think Neurotribes by Steve Silberman is another one that's like really good and powerful to read. So there's a few of the professional resources and organizations that I belong to and that I advocate for and encourage parents to tap into.
That's awesome. And of course, I'm going to be sharing your email on
Mhm.
the podcast. So you guys can always reach out to Jen, if you have any questions, whether it comes to advocating or your child's IEP. She's a great resource. I think obviously I'm not downgrading those that are just starting, to become special, needs advocate or, whatever your title may be in the special education world. But I think, it's always great, especially if it's something so deep in your child's IEP or just like you're really new to this, you just getting a diagnosis and you really don't know. I think it's best to educate yourself with someone that has been in this a little longer, a little more than a year. I don't know. What do you think, Jen?
No, I would definitely agree. I think that experience is important. And experience, again, not just, in the school setting, but experience in working with behavioral health professionals, experience working with parents, other parents of children who have autism. I think having some experience in the advancements, right, that have taken place within the field of autism and the changes that have happened within education, within, what the requirements are, and understanding local, state, and federal policy is also huge when you're
That's
selecting
very
your
good.
advocate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. I guess to end this episode, because I really think you gave, I mean, I really don't have much to say because I wanted you to really bless us. Um, not just with your presence, but just with your knowledge. And I think you gave some really good, insightful points. So I just thank you for that. But my last question would be for you, what advice do you have for parents and even educators who are just embarking into the journey of autism? Because you have been in this for so long
Right.
and you've seen so many things. So what is it, what is that one advice?
Gosh, it's not one. It's a lot. So indulge me. But I would say, first, educate yourself. Educate yourself. I can remember the first time I worked with children with autism. I was at the Timothy School and I was working in ESY and I was a lead instructor. I had maybe 8 boys ranging from 12 to 14, and I had individuals that were there during the whole school year as my assistant. So they definitely were subject matter experts. They definitely had more experience than I did. And we're in circle time and we're doing our morning meeting, and my silly self says, one of them said something, and it was kind of funny. And I was like, get out of here. I lost my whole class. They commenced to picking up their chairs, and we're walking out the door because I said, get out of here. Educate yourself. So now,
No way. Stop it.
that
Okay,
was,
that was actually funny.
that was,
You know,
but I mean, I was mortified
wow.
because I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, no, 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 come back. And the assistants were looking at me like, you dumb. Like, you don't know better than to. So the whole idea of, again, it's a spectrum. It's not a one size fits all, but there are definitely some characteristics that are overarching for any individual that's on the spectrum. And so the importance of educating yourself, understanding what those symptoms are, and then understanding how they manifest in your particular child is important. And if you're an educator, understanding the variance of how the different symptoms, whether it be social interaction, whether it be communication difficulties, whether it be sensory difficulties or needs, you want to make sure, including also the repetitive restrictiveness that also comes and is oftentimes a symptom of autistic children. You want to make sure that you understand that. You want to make sure that as a parent, you're connecting with other parents. You definitely need to connect with other parents. There's strength in having alliances. There's strength in being able to share your wins, and they're your wins, you and your child's wins, as well as your struggles with other individuals who can truly empathize, not be sympathetic, but truly empathize, which comes from experience and understanding and knowing. I would say, obviously, advocating for your child or advocating for your student, because if you're an educator, you'll have children that definitely, and speaking of as far as inclusion goes, you want to make sure that you're able to advocate for your student, and you want to make sure that your general education cohorts or colleagues understand as well. So you want to be an advocate regardless of whether you're a parent or whether you're a teacher. Whether you're a parent or a teacher, you want to embrace neurodiversity. If you're a parent, it looks a little bit different because that's your baby. And so
That's
there's a
right.
process. There's a
Mm-hmm.
process which you talked about in a couple of your first episodes. That's very
Yes.
real. As a mom of children with exceptionalities, it's very real. So go back and watch those episodes if you haven't seen those episodes. Nani will touch on
Yes.
it. But
Yes.
you want to make sure that as a parent, you are embracing that neurodiversity and that you are championing it, and you are educators and parents using a strengths-based approach in
Mm.
everything that you do. Whether you are like what Fiorella was talking about, I think it was in episode 6 of your podcast about, ABA therapies and that sort of thing. If you are going to go that route, you want to make sure that you do your research and that you understand everything
Yes.
that you need to understand, but that your therapist is using a strength-based approach. When you talk about replacement behaviors, right? You want to make sure it's strength-based. If you're an educator, you want to make sure that you tap into that child's strengths to address those areas of need. It's going to make for a much less frustrating experience for you, the child, and your classroom on as a classroom, just in general, on large.
Yeah.
Early intervention, moms, dads, guardians, grandmoms can't impress upon enough the importance of early intervention. It makes a huge difference. It makes
It
a huge
does.
difference. So
And
you
it's
want to,
almost like, honestly, it's not almost, it is the preparation
mm-hmm,
for what's getting ready to start, right? For that
mm-hmm,
beginning of the journey. So
mm-hmm.
you don't want to go straight into the journey without taking those first baby steps. And that's just in general. Like, we tend to just like jump, jump the boat without even knowing how to
Right,
swim.
right.
And that's the truth. So I think take those baby steps,
Mm-hmm,
start easy, get
mm-hmm.
into that early intervention, get a feel of what it is when your child is in
Mm-hmm.
public education, versus being at home. So,
Absolutely. And so, and what the precursor to early intervention is making sure you maintain your child's well child visits. You have to, because the doctor, your pediatrician, is going to most likely would be the first one to identify if the child has some sort of delay
yes.
with respect to milestones. And early intervention oftentimes will come before a diagnosis, such as you discussed in your podcast. Early intervention was there before the
Yes.
formal diagnosis. So you want to make sure that you are exhausting that. I think it was Lily, I think in podcast 5, that talked
Mhm.
about the importance of having structure and schedules, and maybe using visuals at home as a parent. Same, that's
Yes.
something that works in home and school. So that goes to my parents and my educators. Visual, visual, visual. Temple Grandin talks about it, thinking in
Mm-hmm.
pictures. It's real. So
Yeah.
those are just some of the things that I think that we can do, and building a supportive environment. My parents and my educators, parents, your family, your extended family, educating them, helping them to be understanding so they can be supportive. My
Right.
educators, making sure that you educate your classroom, your students, on the fact that we all are different. We all are unique. We all have strengths and areas of need. And this is what it looks like in this classroom. We help and support each other.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. That was awesome, Jen. Thank you so much for just everything, for being here, for giving of your time to really educate, again, not just parents and educators that are listening, but just the community in general.
Right.
So I think that was really, really good. And about the schedule, just to touch base on that really quick,
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, it works at home and in school. But I think if we started at home,
Mm-hmm.
we can take that to the school setting.
Oh, absolutely.
And it makes life so much easier because you should know your child. So let's say for those that are just starting school, or,
Mm-hmm.
your child is just starting school this year,
Mm-hmm.
just make sure, you're building that communication, because we spoke about that on
Right.
episode 5 with
Right.
Lily.
Yes, we
Building that
did.
communication is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait until the middle of the year. Do that
No,
now. Take advantage
exactly.
now. You have to put yourself out there as a parent for your child, especially when
Absolutely.
they can't communicate, when they can't really
For
express
sure.
with their words.
Yeah.
So, is there
Yeah.
anything else you wanted to say?
I think just that, there are, again, these professional organizations will give you a wealth of opportunities, from webinars for educators to support groups and support systems and ideas and resources to parents. But also from the local level, you want to make sure that you are connected and are aware of the different types of offerings that the community has to provide to your children, whether it be different types of sensory opportunities or special days at Please Touch museums, to the aquarium, to movies, to all of that. I have a colleague that I used to work with who is about to open up, I think later on this month. I think it's called Jungle Land. It's in Malvern, and it is going to be an amazing area to learn and play for children,
Oh
for
my
autistic children,
God.
but for other children as well. And
Yeah.
so it's the whole idea of being inclusive.
Oh,
Yes,
I
it's
love
designed with the
that.
autistic child in mind, but I'm sure, neurotypical siblings will be able to enjoy the environment with their sibling as well. And so you just want to make sure that
Yeah.
you're tapped into what
Yes.
your environment, your community has to offer.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm
Yeah, I'm
interested
really
in that.
excited. I'm really excited for her. I'm
That's so
excited for her for sure,
fun.
for sure. And then also your social media. We talked about professional organizations, but there's definitely social media platforms out there that you definitely want to make sure that you're tapped into as a
Yes.
parent.
Yeah.
Whether it's Moments of Joy, that's a podcast, right?
Yes, it is. It is a podcast. I'm actually having her as a guest next week.
Oh, awesome. You guys are in for a treat. But she also has an IG. So, obviously mom of awesome siblings. I don't know, some beautiful young woman who, I don't know, is a heck of a mouthpiece for the autistic community. She has that page. Of course, says
Yes, yes.
Uniquely Wired again. So,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
you want to make sure that you're tapped into and connected with the various resources that are out there in the
Yeah.
world of social media.
Yeah, because there is so much that, the doctor would not tell you,
Hmm.
obviously, because they're doing what they have to do and that's it. They'll get rid of you, but they're
Hmm.
not going to provide you with those resources, especially if you don't ask,
Right.
So,
Huge.
I think this was such an insightful episode, and, If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave that review. I think Jen provided us with some very amazing insights, and I'm just
Thank
grateful,
you.
Jen, again, to have
Oh,
you
I'm honored to
here.
be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. I'll see you guys again on another episode.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to stay connected, please subscribe to my podcast on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave a review and share my episodes with your friends and family.